Right. Here we're gonna do a question answer session with the filmmaker of Tiada Cinta Selama Muda, also known as No Love for the Young. I'm here with Ridhwan Saidi, who is calling us from Kuala Lumpur, his hood. So Ridhwan, I'm gonna ask you a few questions about this film of yours, which is your first feature-length film. Before this, you've done short films and you've also done feature-length plays. You are a multi-hyphenate. I think people in Kuala Lumpur know you also as a novelist, you're also a playwright, and now you are a feature filmmaker. We're waiting for you to also become choreographer and many other things as well along the way. What is this that you cannot do? So maybe we can just start off for the audience telling us how you first started having this idea to create this film. What inspired you for it?
Basically, I was inspired by. Or before I go into that, maybe I can just share my background, some
Sure.
context lah.
Of course.
When I started writing novels, it was like 9 years ago.
Mhm.
So I started doing theatre as a playwright first,
Yeah.
starting like 3 years ago. So there's this like, for me lah, there's a smooth transition from literature to performance making or theatre
Right.
making. And then nowadays lah, I do filmmaking.
Yeah.
So the process for this film is basically from in theatre. There's this like device play or device theatre.
Yeah.
So I watch it a lot, but during that 3 years when I do theatre, I work in a more conventional way lah. So I'm the playwright and the slash director.
Right.
So we have a script and everything, but I watch a lot of a device play show lah. So I can detect some what might work or what might not work. So so for this film,
Yeah.
so we use that technique lah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it seems like a lot of the scenes are built from improvisation, right? So I guess one of the questions we'd like to ask is, did you have a script for this film? Because I'm aware that when you do your plays, many of them are not improvised. You actually start off with a script first, and then the actors come in and then they interpret the script. But for No Love for the Young, tell us a little bit about whether you started off with a script, with a narrative, etc.
Actually, we started with the meeting first. It's like in March or before COVID lah. So I have this macam keinginan. So kita sharekan to the group, the ensemble. So we meet first and I propose my approach lah.
Yeah.
So the idea is when I wanted to do this, I wanted to have this like macam egalitarian attitude lah. So because when I work as a novelist, it's very author based lah. Because when I write novel, I am in control of everything.
Yeah.
When I started doing theatre, I realized that actually it's more collaborative and
democratic.
Yeah. Because it's not about me alone lah. So with this film, I wanted to, especially for this my first feature lah, I want to do something that is like impersonal, something that is not personal to me, but somehow I hope like it became personal. Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Like macam yeah. So the question apa? Terlupa lah.
Sorry. So the question was, did you start off with a script for the film? Yeah. Sorry. So I will just translate a little bit of some of the things that you said just now when you said keinginan. So keinginan is a desire. You had a certain wish, and then you got your ensemble together to work on this piece. And then when you mentioned about as an author, usually you are the individual who's in control. So even in cinema, we have the author theory, right? So someone who directs but also writes, etc. And I think you wanted to challenge that kind of structure or hierarchy of working in film. Yeah. Okay, so back to that question about did you start off your script? How were the scenes generated?
So basically, I started with the text lah. Okay. Because I realized I need some base for everybody to basically know what we are going to do.
Okay.
On the shooting day, instead of so for the I wrote this like macam short scenes. Mostly movement based scene Because the idea we want to do, my initial idea is to do a movement based performance punya film. I imagine it to be like macam everything is in movement. Somehow it grows into other interviews sikit, ada some other things lah.
Okay, so this is interesting, this idea of movement. And actually from yesterday's screening of your film, there's an audience member who's got a question. And I really like this question. It's a question also that I want to ask, yeah? So this audience member says, first of all, thanks a lot for bringing us such a wonderful film! Exclamation mark. It's very interesting to see that signifiers of human language always fail to make sense of other signifiers. For example, when we are trying to break down the meaning of love, we have to use another series of words to explain it, such as affection, lust, etc., etc. When it's futile to make use of symbols from our language, we would resort to our body. So, may I say that this film is a serious discussion and exploration on the kind of language and ideal cinema should employ.
So because basically that is the macam conflict lah to me in this film. Words dengan apa nama body
movement or the body, right?
Yeah. But these two thing actually dia datang dari apa macam yang words tu from my literature background, and then the body actually the performing arts. So I'm not aware tentang cinema, so I just merge what I know from my two previous.
I see. Okay.
So I'm not sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No. It's interesting for me because one of the most interesting things for me is all the intertitles that you have inside your film, right? And then they are actually dictionary entries. And what I find interesting also is that you chose the dictionary is the Wilkinson's Dictionary, which, if I'm not wrong, was published. The earliest one was in 1901, for example. So what we see is Malay words that were spelled in the old manner, right, before the spelling reform. So a word like cinta is CHINTA rather than CINTA. And what's interesting for me is that I suppose by using a so-called archaic dictionary, atau dictionary yang zaman dulu, you are questioning whether the issues have shifted over time. Yeah, whether the contemporary understanding of what love is, has changed. So that's one exploration I really like. And what I really like also is that in Malay, the words cinta, kasih, and sayang. So I do translation as well, right? And this is always so difficult for me because I tend to translate all of them as love, but I know there are like different shades of love. It's like Greek love, right? So you have agape, you have eros, which is a kind of romantic love. You have philia, which is friendship kind of love, right? So I find this interesting, and I think the meanings that we ascribe to these words often escapes dictionary meanings because we make meaning out of them through experience. So what I love about your film is that you ask your actors, what is love? And then you also ask, but have you ever experienced it? Have you ever felt it? So we realize that people are describing it only through how they experience it, so it's something that exceeds the dictionary definition. Yeah. And I also feel that there are times when those things can only be expressed, I suppose, through certain gestural kind of language. So we have the word love, but then certain relationships I really like the motive of when you have the actors put the arm around one another, and I think that sort of like says something that I think language sometimes is unable to or is limited.
Because the dictionary one is like the process is like macam how it came into being. Mulanya because the film grow, dia tumbuh perlahan-lahan.
Okay.
Because
the film grew slowly. Okay.
I didn't separate the shooting and the editing process because I'm the editor as well.
Okay.
We do it like basically saya fikirkan film ni macam pokok lah, dia tumbuh, dia grow to get slowly, and then the subtitle is part of that pertumbuhan.
Right. Okay. Hang on. So basically, you're saying that the film is like a tree, like a plant, right? It grows slowly, organically, and the subtitles is also part of that growth. Right. Okay. So the intertitles, I mean.
Intertitles. the subtitles. But first I do
Oh,
the,
subtitles.
and then I got confused myself with the macam banyak perkataan cinta sayang.
Right. I
So
see.
so from that I use the dictionary lah. I jumpa yang Wilkinson tu kat rumah and scan. So at least I
Ah.
ada guidance untuk for myself as nak buat subtitles tu.
Okay, okay, this is really interesting. So, basically, you're saying that actually, after doing the work, you started doing the subtitles from Malay to English, and then you got a bit confused, as I think any Malay English translator would, well, with all the varieties of the word love in Malay, right? Which is like cinta, kasih, and sayang. So then you went to Wilkinson's dictionary to consult and see whether there's a second opinion on what these words might mean. And then those became incorporated into the film itself. So we started out with the subtitles, and then the intertitles sort of like grew out of that, and then it became part of the language of the film.
Yeah, because some of the words macam dia ada yang dua sama because the film itself dia play around the same words yang dia banyak-banyak datang balik. Sometimes I don't remember macam yang ni I use for this one or this one macam.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So in the film itself, you're saying that some of the words repeat, and sometimes also as the filmmaker, you're not sure in what context you have used them, but then they recur, and then you need to sort of like keep on relying back on what is the definition.
And I think macam the dictionary helps lah for yang yang tak faham, yang tak guna bahasa Inggeris, dia macam satu jambatan. Tapi yang menariknya masa
for non-Malay speakers, the dictionary definitions would sort of be a guide, right? Would help them. Okay. Yeah.
And in one of the internal screenings we did some internal screenings, some of the performers lah, dia ada this idea of macam like what you said, Alfian, yang as if I'm macam challenging or sebab Wilkinson macam kolonial, dia dan the meaning frozen lah dalam dictionary, and I realised that as well. Tapi dalam masa sama dia macam two way jugalah, dia ada satu meaning yang frozen tapi mungkin dia meaningful untuk orang yang tak faham bahasa Melayu. Macam untuk kita dah advance, kita dah tahu benda tu tak stable, but somehow I think because this film terlalu bermain dengan language yang complicated, so I think kita kena ada some
okay, some kind of anchor or for that, right? Okay, so I think the film is a discussion of how actually language can the meanings can sort of like detach itself from its original, right? And then take on like various other meanings of its own. And therefore, you keep going back to the dictionary definition, especially for those people who are non-Malay speakers. This, I think, would be a kind of anchor for them. And then with that kind of anchor, I mean, it allows for all these other like floating other definitions around the work as well.
Because for me, I think the most important, tak kisah language ke, words or body memory atau body punya movement, yang the in-betweenness lah. Because for me, yang the most important thing is the in-between things tu. So I think dia important in a sense, macam words or label, dia ada satu notes, but from this film or what I try to convey is what the feeling yang floating macam in between tu. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that is a very complex thing to for me. Okay, but I think I would say then that a film is really a kind of interrogation of language and meaning, right? And whether meaning is secured by language, whether language is such a secure conveyor of what is meaning, because obviously there are other things that can convey meaning as well, and that you can say something but then your body is saying something else, your movement is saying something else, right? And these are the things that can subvert meaning along the way. I mean, it's so interesting that you're a writer, so obviously these are kind of quite writerly kind of obsessions, right? But I going back to language also, and also the Malay language, I find what's interesting is that you also have other characters in your film who are non-native Malay speakers, and some of them also talk about going to school in different kind of like language school environments as well. And I feel like, is that one of the things that you wanted to explore as well? Because Malay is a very politicized language also in Malaysia, right? and the way in which some minorities are being forced to assimilate into this Malay language and their resistance to it and all that.
Yeah, as the maker, kita try untuk macam mana? I try to actually the film itself is dia macam nak kata, kalau in music there's this macam extended technique. So I consider this like macam extended filmmaking technique in the sense that dia ada macam chance juga, peluang apa macam
Yeah.
um,
Some element of chance, right?
some element of chance because when we shoot dia
Yeah.
waktu COVID yang kita dah boleh keluar kejap.
Okay, so you shot it during the COVID period when you're allowed a little bit of freedom, right? It's not complete lockdown, okay?
So basically, I asked many friends lah from many backgrounds.
Yeah.
Tapi the one yang muncul is the one yang in the film. So
So the
like,
ones that event you called up many different friends, but the ones who turned up are the ones who ended up in the film. Yeah.
so that mixture is I don't control that. I don't want to push that macam that macam some sense of macam diverse punya background tu. I try to make friends with
Okay.
everybody. Tapi I ask everybody. Tapi
You see, okay.
yeah.
Okay, so it's not something that you plan from the beginning to have non-native Malay speakers, whatever. It's just kind of incidental that these were the people who responded to your casting call and were available to make this film. Yeah.
But the casting call is like macam dia kena berbalik pada yang the grow tu, pembesaran. In a sense, when I do the film, it grows from day to day. So the collaborators know. Actually, there's like 14 or 18 of us, but we never meet like macam terus 18. So dia ada slot macam day 1, 3 people, day 2, 3 people. Different mixture.
Sure. Okay.
So yang menariknya, so with different group of people, I didn't plan. Maknanya dia orang kena bercinta bila hari tu.
Right. Okay. So let me just translate that a little bit. So in the spirit of the work, which is a lot of it is based on chance elements, based on who's available, right, on that particular day. You had 18 characters, but not all of them would meet at the same time. So you had to pair off a few of them, and then you told them, okay, this is a love scene. This is your partner for today, and therefore this is a scene that this is a romantic or love scene that you have to create. Yeah, a lot of it was based on all these chance elements.
And what I like about this macam partner atau coupling ni, most of them in this film, basically they don't know each other.
Okay, right.
So they are macam first time kena interact because most of them are. For example, I have this like patient, one of the actor lah. Dia actually 10 of them is actor. Another 4 is non-actor. The non-actor is like macam patient lah. For example, she's doing a research. She came to my house to interview me, and then I show her the footage, and then I ask her to perform. So it's very macam organic or not. Macam mana dia tak dirancang.
Sure. Okay. So you're saying that it's not planned. You got some of these people who are non-professional actors, right? And also for various of the scenes, they don't know each other at all, and only on the set did they sort of get to know one another. And I think you wanted to also try to capture that sense of like strangers first knowing one another. You wanted to capture that first meeting and the spontaneity that would come out from that. Yeah. So maybe just a couple of final questions. Yeah. We get really interesting shots of Kuala Lumpur, and it feels like a very urban film. Yeah, because as much as there's scenes at the beach and all that, and of course the beach is not very urban, but the kinds of interactions that they have with one another, I felt there's something urban about the fact that you could, because when you live in very dense areas, the tendency to sort of meet people that you don't know, meeting strangers, the possibilities of that are a lot higher, right? And when you talk about chance and all that, I think these are things that often happen in cities, very densely populated, and then people having all these like circuits of where they commute and all that and bump into one another and collide. Could you talk a little bit about that? Is this film also a kind of Valentine, maybe, to the Kuala Lumpur cityscape or Kuala Lumpur's nightscapes?
Because macam benda ni menarik macam saya cakap sendiri. In a sense that in literature, in Malaysian punya literature or Malay lah, Malay literature, the writer who writes in Malay, usually they have this macam kampung background,
Right.
the
Okay.
tradition lah. So mostly macam Shah Ahmad
Yeah.
or S. Ahmad Said, dia ada macam dari Singapore punya era sikit, dia macam
Right.
and
So
mostly
you're talking about various like Malay writers, right? Who are known in the world of Malay literature. Okay.
so when I write novels, one of the macam keyword lah orang kata kepada saya dia punya sense of urban tu. Tapi memang betul in a sense that memang saya membesar di Kuala Lumpur
Okay.
compared to
So
my other peers.
sure. Okay. So hang on. So basically, you're talking like in the world of Malay literature, a lot of people, their origins are maybe from, or at least they write about rural environments, right? So the idea of the kampong is something that we encounter a lot in Malay literature. But when people look at your works, one of the keywords that crops up is that, okay, this is urban fiction. But you say it's true because you did grow up in Kuala Lumpur.
So for this film, yeah, there's macam landscape tu yang KL Kuala Lumpur. I don't know, tapi macam mana nak susah nak jelaskan dia bukan dirancang tapi
Okay. Yeah.
tapi the idea is because yang dekat pantai tu, that is our first and second day because during that time kita nak cari location yang tak overpopulated, yang tak ada orang.
Okay, hang on a second. So you would say that even though you grew up in Kuala Lumpur and then your novels and all that are described as urban, but you would say that it's not planned. It's just something that's inside you, right? It's not something that you are crafting in the work itself to sort of like put or foreground the city. As for the seaside scenes, these are the first few days of filming, and this was deliberate for you to find a place that was not so populated. Yeah. Okay. So why did you seek out non-populated places to do?
Because the pandemic, the pandemic.
Oh, I see. Okay. Right.
Yeah, we shoot during the pandemic. So
Okay.
the strategy, because when you said macam city atau urban yang banyak apa,
It's densely populated. Yeah.
in this film semua banyak yang intimate corner in cities lah macam kat balcony. So
Right.
we go to that area lah.
I see. Okay. So it's interesting in the way how COVID was a kind of co-writer of your film and helped to plan some of your scenes for you. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think intentionally, or I suppose unintentionally, it has become a supporting character in your film. The kind of desolation and the empty areas and all the particular locations that you've chosen for the film. Okay, so many things to think about, and thank you so much for sharing with us this film, giving us the background to it as well. Yeah, so I hope for viewers listening in, it has given you some extra background and context to this, what I find a really bold and experimental film coming from Malaysia. Thank you so much, Ridhwan.
Thank you.
Thank you.